into a brand new series this week, and the series is called Life in the Pendulum. We're going to look at the political, the social, and the spiritual transition of God's people, both past and present. Certain things that repeat itself all throughout history, and there's a cycle of events that happens historically with God's people, and we're going to take an example of that in the book of First Kings and dig through this. And it's interesting the parallels that we have in regards to Old Testament history to what we see happening today in our own society right here and right now in the United States and throughout the world. But I'm going to set around this clipboard. If you're interested in helping out with worship, I would love for you to apply your musical talents to this opportunity. So, got about 4 months of different opportunities you could sign up for. So I'm going to send that around. That's just for you, Jerry. You can sign up there. Probably need a little pencil so we can stick with that. But this first little session, it's called A Little Bit of Light. So if you got your Bibles, turn with me to the book of First Kings chapter 2. First Kings chapter 2. This is going to take us several weeks to undergo and to look at the transition of power between David and Solomon. And then we're going to dig into the life of Solomon and see how he started on one area of his life and it was full of God's blessings, but then by the end of his life, you see a transition happening in his rule and his reign and in his own personal life as well. So 1 Kings chapter 2 is where we're going to begin. But as a little means of introduction, it's just me and Ellie at home. And we've been hanging out, watching movies, as well as pulling up the tile and laying it and all that stuff. And I was telling Ellie, we were sitting there in the living room that when I was a kid, we used to eat ice cream sandwiches. Now, most of us, when we think about ice cream sandwiches, we think a cookie with another cookie with ice cream in the middle. But growing up in the Filipino household, is that we literally had ice cream sandwiches. That we would have bread and put ice cream on top of it and put another piece of bread or have a bun. And so kids would come over to our house and say, "Hey, you want an ice cream sandwich?" And they're like, "Yeah." And we give them this hamburger bun full of ice cream in it. And they're like, "What is that?" And I always wanted, it never dawned on me that, that just seemed like a normal thing. Yeah, the ice cream sandwich. And I asked myself, where did that weird culinary tradition come from? And it was interesting. I was watching. How many of you ever watched The Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern on the Travel Channel? We love that show. Yeah. We pick it up every Monday night and we watch some new episodes all the time. But it's really cool. He actually described, where this tradition came from. So I'm going to show you a little clip of this, and you're going to also see some other little interesting foods along the way. So if you're real queasy about different kinds of food, you might want to divert your attention. So parental discretion is advised with this. No, not really, but here we go.
In the Philippines, most food on the street is relatively inexpensive and sold in small portions to be eaten on the go. Here, they call these small bites pulutan, which means finger food.
A little bit of fish sauce, lime juice, garlic, and chilies. A little bit of shrimp pancake. It's like cornflakes with little eyes.
Most Filipinos actually eat 5 or 6 times a day, but they consume smaller portions, and they nibble their pulutan between the main meals.
All you gotta do is walk down the street long enough and you're sure to bump into something that'll float your boat. He's got deep-fried duck eggs, some of which have fertilized embryos inside. Some of them are just plain, not fertilized. But I think what's really cool are little baby chickens. You marinate them, and then they steam them. And whenever you order one, and yes, they
my tracks. I think it's ice cream, but it's purple, and it's served on a hamburger bun?
Alright, I gotta try one. But I'm still curious because, see, this says hamburger buns, not ice cream buns.
Years ago, before vendors had sweet pastry cones to offer, the locals would grab whatever was available to hold the ice cream they were buying. Bowls, cups, even bread, which was always handy. Buns seemed to work best, and the idea quickly caught on, and it's still popular today.
Ice cream in a bun freaks me out.
I'm still trying to get my head around the bun concept when I learned that the flavors I'm about to try are purple yam and cheese. A popular combo here, it turns out.
It's just not right. And you're right to eat it to the death. It just tastes like frozen butter. Here, you try it. What do you like this?
Yes, I'm from that.
Yeah, cheese ice cream. It's unusual. You don't see this everywhere.
Yes, yes.
No.
Yeah.
Only here, correct. I love the Philippines.
After an afternoon of eating street foods on the run, I'm ready to enjoy a real meal. Something indicative of the history of Filipino cooking. Something more natural and organic, perhaps?
Giant coconut tree worms. Next on Bizarre Foods. Trust me,
He's gonna eat it. So, next time we have a potluck, I'm gonna make Filipino food for you. No, it's gonna be the good stuff. It'll be the good stuff. I made some for the kids in Joey's class, and but it'll be good. Next Missions Fest or something like that. I'll dig up something for you. Not literally dig up. But it's interesting to see that. I'm like, oh, that's where the hamburger bun and the bread came from. And here's my point. Every single tradition that we have in our lives has an origin. This hamburger bun was from a time where they didn't have pastry cones or things like that. They just got the most convenient thing that they could to transport their ice cream. And this is the point behind it. The way you are presently, right now, often finds its origins in the past. The traditions that we hold to right now has an origin from the way we were raised or from a historical perspective. So the way that we operate, for example, like in our marriages, we'll find its distinction in the way that we were raised and in the environment that we witnessed as a child. Oftentimes, the way we operate right now in relationship to our spouse is from things that were modeled to us. The kind of work ethic that we have today is often a direct result of the examples you've been given and the principles you were taught. And the kind of Christian that you are today was modeled or communicated to you at some point. And the secret to understanding us presently is to look at the past. So the tradition that we had in our home of having ice cream in the bun had a way of finding it had a tradition in the past. Now, let's translate this to a whole different perspective. The way that we are in our society today, right here and right now, the secret to understanding the way that we are right now is to look at our past. Look at what's happening today. You flip on the news and you're seeing all sorts of crazy things happening throughout the news. Let's take a couple of examples. For one, the Planned Parenthood thing. For example, let me take this one example. For the person who started Planned Parenthood was a gal by the name of Margaret Sanger. Notice what she had to say about organizing this. She said, "We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Is it interesting that 37% of the abortions that are performed today are for minority blacks in the inner city? The way that it started has a profound effect as to what is happening today. Then you come up to today, and how many of you saw that interview with that one gal? That was a secret hidden camera for one of the executives of Planned Parenthood, and she is on video saying that she's willing to negotiate to sell the body parts of these aborted babies. Okay, this is main headline news throughout this week. She quoted as saying, "We've been very good at getting heart, liver, lung because we know that, so that I'm not going to crush that part." She talks about all the procedural things that makes it such a clinical thing, and they're actually selling body parts today. How did we get this way? Where we're profiting off of something so horrific to begin with, and then all of a sudden, it's even amped up even worse. And this has people just up in arms. What in the world have we come to? You take also, for example, the collapse of values through our society. You take also the example of the increased violence. We had this past week down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, another shooting. More violence. You see wars and rumors of war. You see riots happening all over the place. This is just amping up more and more to those end time scenarios where Christ is saying, yeah, there's going to be distress of nations. There's going to be a lack of values throughout society. Seems like the ball is rolling faster and faster as we go throughout this era. Why? Why are we this way? And I think that it's a consequence or a symptom of us being drawn away from God. That we are a society that's becoming more and more ungodly, and as a result, we're seeing the collapse of this society. Ronald Reagan once said, if we ever forget that we are one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under. We've taken God out of our schools, taken him out of the public, out of the workplace. Is it any surprise that he is left? That we are just a consequence of our desiring, no God, we don't want you. That's what we have as a result. We are a nation that is quickly going under. 20 years ago, I spoke on a similar topic about this. I said, you know what? If we fail to pass on our values onto the next generation, in the next 20 years, we could see the collapse of our society. And it's almost a surprise to me. It's happening. We have forgotten our values and forgotten to bring it on to the next generation, and what do you see as a result? You just have to turn on the news and see what's happening and start taking God out of the picture. He's a gentleman. He's not going to stick around if he's not wanted. And so we are a nation that is quickly going under. Solomon once wrote that there is nothing new under the sun. What he meant is that history repeats itself. The news that we see today, it had happened in the past. There's a continuous cycle of events that occurs all throughout history, and there's a pattern that repeats itself over and over in different societies. And Solomon pinpointed it out and said, there's nothing new that happens under the sun. And so, in order for us to understand where we're at today, we need to be a student of history. Now, not a lot of us are, we think about history, think about 7th grade, hot classroom, it's like, oh man. But here today, when I start studying history, I'm like, wow, you see what happened back in ancient Rome? You see what happened back in Greek times? Those kind of things are repeating itself today. And so for us to understand what's happening in the news today, we have to understand, okay, there's been a cycle of events that's been happening. Where should we go from here? If we know what happened back then, there's something that needs to be done right here and right now in order to take care of the problems that we have. I've given you this quote before, but it bears repeating because it's going to go through that cycle of events like we have talked about before, about when it comes to Solomon and to David. But Alexander Fraser Tytler, or his other name is Lord Wodehouse Lee, he said the average age of the world's great civilizations has been 200 years. These nations have progressed through the sequence, gone from bondage to spiritual faith. To spiritual faith, to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance, what happens? To selfishness. From selfishness into complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, and from dependency back into bondage once again. You fast forward, for the time that Alexander wrote this, you fast forward 200 years, where are we at? We are an apathetic society. We just don't care. We are completely dependent upon, oftentimes, the government to take care of our needs. If the government is going to take care of my needs, no. Why do I have to depend upon God? We have a complacent and selfish society. These are all indicative of the collapse of a society, and it goes back into bondage. When you have all of these ingredients right there, the ultimate result is back into bondage once again. John Quincy Adams once said the transcendent glory of the American Revolution was this: it connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with what? With the precepts of Christianity. Our founding fathers knew that when you had government and it's combined with Christianity, you could have a moral society. But what happens if you take God out of the picture? You have collapse. And that's that cycle that will repeat itself over and over in a society. We've seen it in the past. It will continue here into the present. What are the consequences of dissolving these principles of government with the precepts of Christianity? What happens when you break it down? Mr. Benjamin Franklin said, this is what happens. He said, I lived a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured in the sacred writings that except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain who build it. I firmly believe this. And I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. We shall be divided by our little partial local interests, our projects will be confounded, and we ourselves shall become a reproach and a byword down to future ages. Almost talking about our own time. Once you break that indissoluble bond between government and the precepts of Christianity, what's the result? Simply become a reproach and a byword to future ages. The wisest of all persons who ever walked this earth was a guy by the name of King Solomon. And in the transfer of power from his father David to him, we see the prosperity and the abundance in his kingdom. And you see eventually the moral compromise and the alienation from God to the infiltration of foreign powers. And we see a cycle beginning with him of nations that has repeated itself over and over. This is a cycle. This is an example of what we're going to take a look at here in 1 Kings chapter 2 that is repeating itself right here and right now. So how do we stave off that eventual collapse, how do we break that cycle? Let me tell you, it's only through the power of God that we do so. But let's look at an example. How did this kingdom begin? What was it? They were in bondage. They were under difficulty and strife under King Saul, and then they came to great courage and faith and spiritual fervor and great abundance. What was it at the beginning of this reign of Solomon that would begin his kingdom? And so let's take a look together. 1 Kings chapter 2, and what we're going to find out together is that David's final words to his son Solomon contain wisdom and instruction for the government of the nation and for his personal life. So 1 Kings chapter 2, let's get a little bit of background to this. So David, at this point, he is on his deathbed. He calls his son Solomon in and saying, I'm going to die. I have some final instructions for you. Now, oftentimes when people start talking about David and of Solomon, they're like, well, he didn't exist. So people outright say, okay, David, just a fictional guy, it was just his name was just a word for the government that was happening at that time. And so people oftentimes at the very beginning of this narrative say, no, these guys didn't exist. But what we're seeing in archaeology and even today, we're finding more discoveries about this character of David. Take, for example, there's something called the Tel Dan Stele. And on this piece of rock that they found in the Hebrew inscription, the house of David. Right there. Dated to the time of David. You see the same exact thing happen, and it's called the Moabite stone. Again, it's dated right there. Talking about Jehoram under the house of David again. You see this repeated over and over in archaeology today. There's a city by the name of Sha'araim, and this is the first city. You remember when David smote Goliath and they were chasing the Philistines away? This was the first city that they kind of conquered along the way, and it was Sha'araim. And oftentimes when they conquered the city, that they would kind of purify the area. So they would get rid of all sorts of the pagan influences in the city. And so this was his first palace city, and they found the city there, and the word Sha'araim means two gates. So they're like, okay, is this really the city that was talked about in 2 Chronicles when David went and conquered? And so they went into the city and they found out, oh yeah, there are two gates here. They went further, and then they noticed as they were digging around, they found absolutely no pig bones. Now, why would that be significant? Yeah, because Jews don't touch pigs. So anytime that you went to a pagan city, you find pig bones all over the place because they ate pigs. But you came to this pagan city that was conquered by David, and you found absolutely no pig bones around there. You also found no little coins with people's faces on it, or pieces of pottery with people's faces on it, because the Jews, they said that you shall make no graven image. And so they found absolutely nothing of these portraits of people in this whole entire city. And this is the exact city that David conquered right there after he smote Goliath. And so you see all this archaeological evidence. Yeah, David did exist. He wasn't just this character that people made up. He was an actual historical individual, as Scripture has stated. So what we have here, yes, David is a literal character. He is lying on his deathbed. He's about 70 years old. He's been king for about 40 years. According to the doctors at Ben Gurion University, David was afflicted with hypothermia. He just couldn't hold body heat. So they piled all these blankets on top of him, put bedclothes on top of him, tried to get him warm, but he just couldn't get warm. In the medical practice of that day, they got a young woman to lie in the bed next to him to try to keep him warm and serve as his nurse at that time. Bedside matter for that kind of nursing back there. But they tried to do all sorts of things to keep him warm, to keep him alive, and realized that his time was finishing. So he calls Solomon over to his side and gives him instruction and counsel to his successor. And he gives him some final words. And it's interesting just how short his final words are. If I were to pass on and give some final words to my kids, I would want to write a book of advice for them or video something so they can learn from me. But it's interesting that, surprisingly, that David only says 7 verses to his son. He only gives them a little bit of advice, and then he passes on as we get to the middle of the chapter. There are 3 things that he tells them. For one, in all of your efforts, pursue God. In all of your efforts, pursue God. Look at verses 3 and 4. Actually, we're going to read that whole entire section in verse 1. It says, "When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. I am about to go the way of all the earth, he said. So be strong, show yourself a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in his ways, keep his decrees and commands, his laws and his requirements, as written in the law of Moses, so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel." Notice the very first thing that he tells his son Solomon is, pursue God. Follow him. It would say further in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16, that if your descendants, David, would follow me and obey my instructions, you're never going to lack a man on your throne. The primary thing that David wanted of his son Solomon was to follow the Lord. Just have a relationship with God. I've found in my life that I have a whole huge list of things I want to do and accomplish. And God often knocks me back, flat on my back, and says, "Bruce, you're doing way too much. You need to just simply focus on being my child and my son." Back in 2008 and 2009, I got the shingles. If you don't know what the shingles are, it's related to the chicken pox, and I had been stressed out, not sleeping, not eating right, and it's related to the chicken pox, but creates a rash, and it's oftentimes stress-induced, and I was like, man, it feels like broken bricks. I was like, what in the world, did I break something in here? And it had this huge rash coming along my side, and I had to realize, Bruce, you're running yourself into the ground. You gotta take a step back and start healing up a bit. I'm going to share with you a little portion of my journal when I was writing back then. Might be a little bit small, but I took about a month off to try to heal up. And second week, I was out in Minnesota trying to heal up. The second week we were gone, I spent a day by myself in a cabin that one of my father-in-law's church members owned. And I was there. I felt the need for some spiritual renewal. In the past few months, I had just felt drained. So the desire to get spiritually healthy was strong. I prayed, God, what do you want me to do? What direction do you want my life to take? What am I doing or not doing that you would have me accomplish? So I made a list of things. I wanted to accomplish and goals to pursue. I wanted to read a few books by authors. I had a whole huge list of things I wanted to do. But after working through all those things, I found myself even more drained. I had a whole list. Eventually, I found myself just opening up the Bible and reading. I started in Matthew 1, and it was like I was hungry. I started reading the New Testament. I couldn't stop. I feel like I've been preparing so many lessons and messages, I was starving. I forgot to spiritually feed myself. I was so hungry for something that all the books, all the wisdom, and all the activities of this world couldn't provide. And I found that it was like God was saying, Bruce, you don't need to do all these spiritual tasks and deeds. This list is meaningless. You're a human being, not a human doing. Stop doing things and start being my son. All I want is to sit and talk with you. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and the knowledge of the Holy One, understanding. So in the back of my Bible, I've listed the priorities of what my life in Christ should entail. Number one, I'm a child of God, which makes me a son. Number two, I'm a husband, which makes me a spouse. Number three, I'm a father, which makes me someone's daddy. Number four, a pastor, which makes me a shepherd. And fifth, a human, which I call self. These roles define who I am, what I do, and the order in which I am to serve. In all of my activity, I forgot to be a son. And the lesson I learned is that if you make self the priority, invariably you will be unfulfilled and all other things on the list will suffer. You will be absolutely miserable. If I put being a spouse before being a son, it's not going to work. Because the love for one's spouse has to be a reflection of one's love for God. And when you put God first, you are forgiving, tolerant, and able to accept one another unconditionally. If I make the priority of my life being a shepherd, I won't have any spiritual vigor left, running on empty. You have to be filled by Him in order to fill others. Anything in replacement of being a son or a daughter will leave you disillusioned and disoriented and drained every single time. And I had to learn that lesson in a very tough way. Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness. Just be a son, be a daughter of His. And then, guess what? All these other things shall be added unto you as well. So that is the very first priority that David gives to his son Solomon. Just follow God. Pursue God. In all of your efforts, pursue God. Number two, let me go back. In all of your endeavors, promote justice. Look at what happens here in verses 5 through 9. It's interesting what David next tells them. He says, "Now you yourself know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did to the two commanders of Israel's armies, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding their blood in peacetime as if in battle, and with that blood stained the belt around his waist and sandals on his feet. Deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace." Let's skip verse 7. We'll come back to it in just a second. But verse 8, "And remember, you have with you Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who came down with bitter curses on me the day I went to Mahanaim. When he came down to me to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. But now, do not consider him innocent. You are a man of wisdom. You will know what to do. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood." So there's several characters that David mentions here. Let's detail this. First of all, you have Joab. Now, Joab was one of David's mighty men, and he served him faithfully. And then David's son, Absalom, came along, and he tried to subvert David's throne. And then what Joab did is that you recall the story as Absalom tried to overthrow David. David's armies fought against him, and Absalom realized he was losing, ran away on his mule. His hair was really long, got caught in the trees, and he was left hanging in the air by his hair in the street. Joab comes along and says, and he's told, "Hey, look, Absalom's hanging here. What should we do with him?" David, at that time, told him, if you find Absalom, don't harm him. So Joab comes along and says, okay, this guy, let's just get rid of him. Takes 3 darts, sticks it in his heart, kills him. Right there. David, in recognition of this, has realized, even though he was trying to subvert my throne, even though Absalom was trying to overtake the nation of Israel, he's still my son. And Joab disobeyed a direct order. So one of David's instructions to Solomon is, you know what? You cannot allow Joab to return, to go to the grave in peace. So he says, you're going to have to take him out. It says the same thing about this other guy. His name is Shimei. And Shimei, as David was leaving the palace and trying to flee for his life from Absalom, Shimei comes along, starts throwing rocks at him, and starts insulting him. And then David says, this guy, you need to take care of him as well. So, first thing, interestingly, David tells Solomon, okay, follow God. Second thing, he says, you're going to have to seek justice for me. Now, there's 2 kinds of justice that are mentioned in Scripture, and they can be divided into 2 broad types. You have distributive justice, and it's concerned with a proper distribution of good things like wealth, power, reward, respect between different people. You have distributive justice, and then you have retributive or retributive justice is concerned with a proper response to wrongdoing, to making things right. The kind of justice that David is seeking is the retributive justice. Now, in the New Testament, we are not to seek that for our own selves. It says that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will repay. He's the one who's going to have the final word. Even when we are when wrongdoing is made against us, we are to turn the other cheek. We're to forgive. And so, but it's important to understand that the principle behind seeking justice in the New Testament is one of seeking to make the right wrong, to defend the defenseless, to defend the weak. You take, for example, what Jesus said of himself. He said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of the sight to the blind, and set free to those who are downtrodden, to proclaim the great day of the Lord. So there is an emblem of us. Yes, we are to seek justice in our society, to make right the wrongs that have been committed against people and individuals. And so that's number 2. In all of your endeavors, promote justice. And number 3, in all of your exertions, portray compassion. Let's back up to verse 7 and see what happens here. He says, but show kindness to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead, and let them be among those who eat at your table. They stood by me when I fled from your brother Absalom. So, here's this last character that David talks about. This guy by the name of Barzillai right here. And as David was running away from Absalom, he encountered Barzillai in the middle of the desert. And Barzillai, he provided, even though David was unpopular, he provided bread and grains and milk and cheese and sheep to him. And he also helped him across the Jordan River. And he never accepted a word of thanks from David. Even though he did all of these kind things for David in the middle of the wilderness, Barzillai never accepted any of it. And so one of the last instructions that David gives to his son Solomon is, I want you to accept this guy into your home and show him the kindness, show him and his family the kindness that he showed to me in the time that I was unpopular. And so one of the things that David instructs him to do is, in all of your exertions, be compassionate. Be compassionate to those who are in your path. I had a little video clip that I was going to share with you, but I'm going to save it for another time since we're running out of time here. But Compassion is one of the things that we are to display to one another when in all of our endeavors here. Now, did you notice these three things? Notice the three things that David told Solomon. He's told him, pursue God, promote justice, portray compassion. Did you notice that those three things are repeated in Scripture? For example, it says in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, that he has shown thee, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of thee, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. So the same thing that David tells his son Solomon, I want you to pursue God. I want you to walk humbly with God. I want you to promote justice. I want you to be merciful and compassion. Those things are displayed in Micah 6, 8. Let me quote that to you again. He has shown thee, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of thee, but to do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. One of the major issues we are facing nationally is we have abandoned these principles. We have abandoned God. We're not serving justice. We are no longer compassionate. Did you know this past week, as we're getting news about persecution over in Syria and Iran, we found out that thousands of individuals are trying to seek amnesty, trying to get escape from these ravaged areas, specifically Christians. And you know what our country is doing about that? I read this past week that we're not providing any visas for any Christians in Syria. Even though they're being persecuted and being put to death, right there, no compassion for these individuals. If we are going to accomplish anything in this society in these dark hours, it's that we return back to these very basic principles of doing justice and loving mercy and walking humbly. George Washington said, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism who would labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. He knew that in order for a society to succeed, it needed to be connected with the indispensable supports of morality and religion, specifically Christianity. Notice what he says right there at the very end. The politician, equally with a pious man, ought to respect and cherish them. So how do we change the society? It doesn't start with Barack Obama. It doesn't start with all of our government officials. Right there it says the politician as well as individuals. I want us to think about our lives today. In all of our relationships and all that we do, are we doing justice? Are we loving mercy? Are we walking humbly with our God? Some of you are, this week you got a storm coming up ahead. You have some major tasks ahead of you, something that's going to really try you. Facing a really big decision, got a job that needs to be accomplished, a challenge. Maybe you have a relationship that's been strained lately and you're like, God, what do I do? Don't know what to do. You got so many things that need to be accomplished. Maybe we go back to those very basic principles. Am I doing justice? Am I loving Think about that in relationship with your spouse. Am I doing what's right for them? Am I being merciful to them? Am I being forgiving? Am I making God the priority of my life? Think about that in relationship to your workplace or to your school. What happens if pious men and women start saying, I'm going to do what's right, and love God all through it, and I'm going to be merciful and forgiving and kind? Imagine what would happen in this society. Change in the society doesn't begin in the halls of Congress, it begins in the pews. It begins right here in our own hearts. So will we be today, all of us, Christians, followers of God, who walk humbly, who love mercy, who promote justice? Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you would be the focus and intention of our hearts and lives. And God, that was the instruction that you gave to Solomon through David, to pursue those things. May that be our pursuit when it comes to our society, when it comes to our families, to our schools, to that relationship that we know that's been strained. God, you know exactly what we need to do. Help us to be humble. Help us to follow you. Help us to be merciful and forgiving and compassionate, even though it's hard. Lord, help us to be pursuers of justice. Do what's right. To these ends, God, we want to follow you. We seek first your desires. And we pray this in Jesus' name.